Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So Rintrah's deep dive got posted about 2 hours ago, so let's get to it. Let's break it down. And Rintrah actually seemed the more exciting of the two champions for me, and I'm actually quite interested in him. Now, the most important thing, aside from some big yellow numbers that he will inevitably is going to be able to put out, but again, let's just keep it steady there and remember that there are a lot of champions that can build up to a big burst of damage at times, and that not necessarily is going to be the selling point. However, there is something far more useful that I think a lot of people are going to be overlooking, and that is his Neutralise. He has 60% chance to inflict non-stacking Neutralise whenever he gets hit or whenever he hits the opponent. So number one, he is going to be pain in the ass on defense for a ton of champions. Because if you're going to be going up against him with anyone that has plenty of buffs, then, well, those buffs will be failing to begin with, and he's going to be ramping up super quickly. So, additionally to that, he also has 30% energy resistance and crit resistance, so he is likely going to be quite a bit of a tanky champion. And on top of that, he also reduces armor break potency by 50% for each armor break already on him. So we all know that there are certain champions who love armor breaks for the damage output, and it's not going to go well for them. Additionally, on top of all of that, he gains extra attack per armor break on him. That means that there are going to be some very, very cheesy matchups, because we have some nodes that inflict a ton of armor breaks on you, or potentially with that increased energy resistance, he could be able to smash some Teraxes, or even against Angela. Those armor breaks are quite brief, but whenever she throws special attack, there would be some interesting things to take a look at. But the main point is his raptures, though. All of his raptures deal minuscule damage, but they effectively serve as the big damage power-up for the level 2s. Kind of like for Sasquatch. Except it does seem to me that it is much easier to build up those raptures for Rintrah, and it's also kind of much more convenient in a sense. So here is just a bit of a damage comparison with armor break. Without armor break, he is also a champion that roots himself. So he has a root mechanic, and it is quite easy to access. You can either do it with level 3, or you can do it with just finishing a combo with a light attack whilst opponent's against the wall. So you're not going to want to be cornered against this guy, because if he does drop a light ending combo against you, then, you know, he's going to be unstoppable and you're not going to be able to get out of that corner for a while. Additionally, he also has ability where he goes unstoppable when he's cornered, so it could be tricky fighting against him, certainly on the first glance, at the very least. But the point is, once he kind of roots himself in a place, then he can enter this rapture mega building phase, and then you build up a ton of raptures. You can pause those raptures with a heavy attack, and you would also exit the root with heavy attack. And then if you drop a level 2, and there will be a ton of damage. But I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of root mechanic, but it is fairly creative implementation of it, so I'll reserve my judgment on it for now. Also, whilst you are rooted, you are taunting the opponent, so he does have access to taunt, which legitimately could potentially make him, again, an option for all or nothing. He doesn't have any other power control in his kit, however, I always like to see taunt mechanic on as many champions as possible. Right, and all of that put aside, he also has this mythical energy charge mechanic where he goes up to 20 charges, and that kind of functions a bit similarly like with Nick Fury, where you build these charges and then you gain additional effects and additional resistances as well, I believe. And we don't have, I think, all the precise details for it, however. What are we showcasing here? That is his unstoppable when he's cornered. There's some decent level 2 damage, again, for the finish. Also, he can have unblockable special attacks when he's at like 15 plus charges, I think, or 10 plus charges. So again, those mythical charges are going to come into play once we actually kind of have full ability breakdown. But I do believe that it can enable him to root himself during opponent's special attacks. So if you're not careful against him, again, it's going to be another tricky defensive mechanic. In order to reduce the amount of mythical charges that he has, you can drop heavy attacks that takes away 5 of them, or they can just expire naturally once he has started using those effects. But again, it does really appear that there will be quite a lot to keep in mind whilst facing the guy. That being said, all the pretty raptures and mega damage. Look how small he looks compared to Sasquatch though. Either way, here he is rooting himself during Kitty's special. Which abilities? And if he's above 15 charges, he can also go stun immune, which again just is going to be likely an annoying defensive mechanic, much more than offensive use, but we'll see about it. And yeah, then you also can just root yourself during opponent's special attacks, go unstoppable, and then just punish opponents after those special attacks. So it does seem quite tricky to fight against him. Again, to reduce the amount of mythical charge he has, you can just start heavying him as much as you can. But keep in mind, if you try to corner spam your heavy attack, he can go unstoppable, I think, if he's in corner. Now, level 1. As for level 1 is going to be the quickest way how you can build up your mythical charges. And then on top of that, you can also gain a passive Fury buff, increasing your attack. Unfortunately, we do not know how potent is that Fury buff. All that being said, it does appear that his base damage is fairly minor, fairly small. It's just that most of his damage will inevitably be concentrated on that big level 2. So there will obviously be in scenarios where that is not necessarily the ideal option of dealing damage, because 1 burst damage always is subject to damage caps and just a lot of things like that. And obviously crit RNG is going to be something that you will be at the mercy of as well. But that being said, yeah, if level 2 crits, you're going to be doing a ton of damage quite quickly and quite easily. His level 3 basically can let you regenerate a bunch of health and root yourself, and after your level 3, you're in the corner as well, and that is kind of helpful to his, game plan, so to say. But you can regen up to 20% of your health, I believe, based on your energy. And now we have Awakened ability. Every time Neutralise prevents a buff, gain a power gain buff, giving 10% of max power over 2 seconds. So that is going to be extremely cheesy in some matchups as a Mystic. And while Unstoppable, passively regenerate 3% of your missing health getting struck or blocking an attack by the opponent. Again, that's neat. But the main thing is that, you're going to be gaining tons of extra power if he is awakened. And that does seem to be scaling with Sig level, so you're likely going to want to have him quite high Sig. And that is kind of like the summary of the character. Now, I do think he's a bit of a mix of Sasquatch and kind of like a Tigra, because of that Neutralise and the fact that you can have Neutralise up pretty much the entire fight. And that alone kind of makes him quite interesting to me, especially also because unlike Sasquatch, you have control over when you enter your Wrath of Tenerak. In Sasquatch, that's random. Here, you know exactly what you're doing, how you're building charges. Now, there is a question of how successful that root mechanic implementation is going to be and how viable it is going to be in hard, tricky fights, and whether you're going to be able to use Rintrah, let's say, in Alliance War. But on initial glance, I'm kind of really hoping that it works out for him, because there's quite a lot there. There is persistent, consistent buff control with his Neutralise, and then there is obviously access to Rapture and a big amount of burst damage. And then on top of that, there can be unblockable specials, stun immunity, which can be quite useful as well. And root mechanic can itself serve as additional piece of utility, because you do have fairly good control over the AI whilst opponents are rooted. On top of that, they are taunted as well, so any champion that has access to taunt, at the very least kind of gets a peak of my interest there, because I do think taunt is one of the most amazing abilities in the game. And then on top of that, there is some regen and extra stuff there, and he looks quite tanky. So it does look to me like there is a potential for an amazing champion. And after the initial glance, and again, that is very early on, I still haven't tried to draw any final conclusions or anything of the sort. But to me, Mordor looks more of a special, spammy, kind of like fun damage dealing character. And Rintrah to me looks more actually viable. A champion that I need a good Mystic champion, I might bring in Rintrah because of that Neutralise and because of some other things there. That being said, still not sure what would make him have, quote unquote, the upper hand against other Mystic champions. But we need to see that once we get more gameplay out there. So, Synergies. Now, with Vision Arcus or Dormammu, start the fight with 5 mystical charges. Nice, why not? Quicker ramp up. Dormammu, that's nothing special there for Dormammu. Vision Arcus, increase cold snap debuff damage by 50%. Sure, neat, why not? It's quite nice. Now, with MCOC, Rhino, or Purgatory, Rintrah has 30% chance to reapply any raptures removed on special 2. Now, that could potentially be extremely useful because you can get up to like 60 raptures, and then if you get a third of them back, you could re-ramp fairly quicker. MCOC gained 10% attack rating per stagger. He needs much more than that in damage department. Rhino gained a 25% crit rating. That's basically irrelevant. And Purgatory, class souls last extra 2 fights. That's actually quite huge. That is actually quite huge for Purgatory. But again, I do think she kind of needs a bit more. But it does help her quite a lot. Now with Captain Britain, Betsy Braddock, and Taskmaster, Rintrah increased neutralize duration by 1 second. Yeah, sure, why not? That's quite useful. Increase the duration of exploit weakness by 5 seconds for Taskmaster. I don't necessarily think that exploit weakness duration is an issue with Taskmaster, so I'm not sure if this is even going to be overly helpful, to be honest. Then we have Captain Britain. Every time a debuff is purified, deal a burst of 25% attack rating as an energy damage to your opponent. Some more damage, but again, I'm still not going to be the biggest fan of Captain Britain. Now, this synergy is quite interesting for MCOC, and I also think one of the better ones for Rintrah, where inflict 4 rapture debuffs dealing tiny amount of attack over 15 seconds on last hit of special 1. That means that you can use special 1 to get extra raptures as well, and that just kind of speeds up your ramp up. I do like that a lot. And MCOC landing a critical hit if both a personal incinerate and bleed an opponent, pause them for 6 seconds. So initially I thought the synergy is going to be very, very cool, but then I realized you need to have both. That means you need to get to level 2 first and foremost, and then drop a heavy attack, and then you can pause them, and that kind of takes it away from that synergy, but it's quite good for Rintrah. So neither of the champions is like a synergy powerhouse, I would say, but overall at the moment I'm definitely more interested in Rintrah, just because primarily of that huge access to Neutralise. That is a major thing. It's one of the main reasons why, for instance, Tiger is as good as she is. And yeah, I definitely am very curious to see exactly how he's going to perform. And I look forward to seeing much more gameplay of these champions. But, forgot to add at the beginning of the video, but I will add it to the thumbnail. It is also important to understand that both of these champions, Wong and Rintrah, are subject to rebalance program. So if you do get excited by either one of them, be very aware of the fact that either one of them could get changed, if not both. That being said, let me know what you guys think about Rintrah, and I will catch you guys soon. See ya!
Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the